Hello, I'm Adrian Gonzalez, president of Adelante SEM, and it's great to be back as your host for this July 2023 edition of Transporeon Journal Market Updates. Can you believe we're at the halfway mark of 2023 already? It's like halftime at a football match, and supply chain logistics professionals are in the locker room preparing for the second half. What adjustments do you need to make to finish the year strong? Do you need to revisit your transportation strategy and contracts? Adjust your inventory management policies? Find new suppliers? Fire some customers? Reduce the number of SKUs you offer? Revamp your employee hiring, training, and retention programs? Outsource more functions to third parties? Or maybe bring some outsourced operations back in-house? Those are just a few questions worth considering before taking the field again, because I'm sure not everything went according to plan in the first half of the year, and the weeks and months ahead remain as unpredictable and risky as ever. What's top of mind for many businesses at the moment is the economy, especially in Europe. It's been sluggish for more than a year, and the outlook remains cloudy at best. As reported by CNBC on June 8th, the Eurozone entered a recession in the first quarter of this year, and economists are not optimistic for the coming months. According to the article, the 20-member bloc reported gross domestic product of negative 0.1% for the first quarter of 2023, according to revised estimates from Eurostat. The Eurozone also contracted by 0.1% in the last quarter of 2022. Ireland, the Netherlands, Germany, and Greece are among the Euro economies that reported an economic quarter-on-quarter contraction for the first quarter of this year. In its latest economic outlook, as presented on June 6th, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development projects a moderation of global GDP growth from 3.3% in 2022 to 2.7% in 2023, followed by a pickup to 2.9% in 2024. For the Eurozone economy, however, the OECD expects it to grow just 0.9% this year, about half as much as the US economy. To quote from a June 8th article in the Wall Street Journal, economists think all of this points to a slow and protracted recovery for the continent later this year, where consumers and businesses are also feeling the drag from higher borrowing costs as the European Central Bank continues to raise interest rates to fight inflation. So, when it comes to the economy and inflation, the scale remains tilted a bit toward the pessimistic side. Meanwhile, on the supply chain front, supply chain pressures continue to plague mid-sized businesses in the UK, with 77% facing persistent disruptions in their supply chains, according to a survey of 500 medium-sized businesses conducted by the accountancy and business advisory firm BDO. The June 5th press release adds that faced with these prolonged pressures, almost half, 49.8%, of mid-sized businesses say they will be focusing on onshoring as much of their operations as possible in the next 12 months. The survey reveals that this onshoring trend is being driven by several factors, including a desire by companies to reduce the impact of global geopolitical events on their business and a wish to avoid complex post-Brexit customs regulation. This onshoring trend isn't just limited to the UK. Demand for Europe factory space rises 29% amid nearshoring rush, was the headline in a June 13th Financial Times article. As Oliver Telling reports, manufacturers around the world are snapping up more European factories despite an economic downturn in the region, as geopolitical and supply chain concerns prompt businesses to bring their operations closer to their customers. The data comes from commercial real estate services firm Cushman & Wakefield, and its head of logistics and industrial in Europe, Tim Crichton, says in the article that the use of robots in manufacturing, which has minimized the cost-benefit of producing in regions with cheaper labor, has created a compelling case for European businesses to boost production closer to consumers. No doubt, the use of robots in both manufacturing and warehousing, as well as growing political risk, is getting companies to think beyond cheap labor when developing their manufacturing and sourcing strategies moving forward. That said, onshoring is easier said than done. One of the big challenges is getting your suppliers and other trading partners to make the move too. In the BDO survey I referenced earlier, for example, 20% of the respondents said that there are no UK-based suppliers capable of delivering the services they need. Nonetheless, this is a trend worth keeping an eye on, because depending on how widespread onshoring becomes, it can have a significant ripple effect impact on transportation and distribution networks in the months and years ahead. Speaking of transportation, where are we today compared to a year ago? Let's take a look at data from Market Insights to get some perspective. A year ago, in May 2022, the capacity index was 85.9. A reading under 100 indicates a capacity-constrained environment. On the morning of this recording, the capacity index was 101.9 in May 2023, a 19% year-over-year increase. Simply put, there's significantly more capacity in the market today than at this point last year. That's been the case for the first 5 months of 2023 too, although the index has come down a bit from a high of 112.8 in February. Looking at the spot price index, which tracks the spot rate across 70 major lanes in Europe and weighs each lane according to its transport performance, it was 117.6 in June 2023, a 19% decrease from June 2022. And the contract price index, which tracks the contract rate across the same 70 major European lanes, was 120.9 in June 2023, which is a 12-month low. The index, however, hasn't changed very much in the past 12 months, ranging between 120.9 this June and 123.7, which was the high reading last August. Where we've seen the biggest change, however, is in the difference between the spot price index and the contract price index over the past 12 months. For most of 2022, the spot price index was significantly greater than the contract price index. In June 2022, for example, the difference was 23 points. Through the first 6 months of 2023, however, the spot price index has been lower than the contract price index. And from April through June 2023, the difference between the two indices has been about 3 points. This suggests that we're in a more balanced environment at the moment from a supply and demand perspective. Will this equilibrium last for the rest of the year? It's impossible to say, especially when the holiday season kicks in later in Q3, but for now it's a good place to be. Finally, let's look at the EU cost index that shows the evolution of costs for trucking carriers across the 70 biggest lanes in Europe. It aggregates data into 5 clusters, which represents the 5 biggest cost factors for carriers: driver costs, fuel and AdBlue, vehicle, toll, and services, and sums it up into a single index via a total cost of ownership calculation model. The index has a baseline of 100, which represents the average cost seen in the last 2 quarters of 2019. This means that values larger than the baseline represent an increase in costs. The cost index is forecasted to be 120.35 in Q2 2023, about the same as the 120.29 reading in Q2 2022. However, it remains significantly elevated compared to 2 years ago when it was 101.47 in Q2 2021. The large increase in fuel costs sparked by the Russia-Ukraine war and other factors has been a big factor, although the fuel and AdBlue component of the cost index has been declining since reaching a high of 39.66 in Q2 2022. It is forecasted to drop down to 33.68 in Q2 2023. Looking ahead, the cost index is forecasted to increase to 121.31 in Q3 2023, driven in part by expected increases in labor costs, which remains the largest component of total cost for carriers. If you want to learn more about market insights and its different data components, you can watch a short video series online that provides an overview of the platform. As I noted in our last episode, the combination of increasing operating costs with decreasing rates and freight demand means that carriers continue to find themselves between a rock and a hard place. Remaining profitable in this environment will be an ongoing challenge for carriers. Compounding the situation are the expected toll increases in Germany. Since many shipments transit through Germany to reach other countries, this will have a broad impact on costs for carriers across Europe. To share some insights on these toll increases and what companies can expect as a result, I'm excited to welcome Lena van Fritsen, Director of Market Intelligence at Transporeon, to join me on the program today. Lena, thank you for making the time to be here. Can you share with us some details about these expected toll increases, why the increase in tolls, how will it impact costs?
Thanks, Adrian, for having me. Indeed, the CO2 toll is currently discussed very controversially at the moment. So as you know, the overall debate is where to target investments, because it is clear that road traffic will increase substantially over the next years, and we desperately also need to invest in railways at the same time. But maybe first some facts. So as part of the modernization package for climate protection and acceleration of planning, it was decided to fund railways while increasing truck tolls, specifically via a CO2 surcharge of 200 euros per ton. So this modernization package is then intended to bring Germany closer to the transport development necessary for the transport turnaround to become more sustainable. So in this way, the goal is to financially support the expansion of the railway infrastructure, and at least 80% of those resources are then allocated to the modernization of the railway infrastructure. To keep in mind, this will become or will probably come into effect December 2023. So keep in mind, the bill has not passed the German government, so the Bundestag in that sense. But if not December, definitely in January next year. And also from July 2024 onwards, also trucks above 3.5 tons will be subject to this change. And emission-free trucks will be exempt until 2025. So, but what does it actually mean in that sense? So the surcharge basically corresponds to a doubled toll price, which is very substantial, as Germany is the main transit country in that respect. So it will affect a lot of transport in that sense. And as part of the total transport costs, we estimate that the total rate increase for shippers in that sense will be 5 to 10% for transports running through Germany. And we're already calculating this for our current customer base because they obviously need to budget costs in that sense. So short and midterm, this increase will happen as there is no real alternative. It was also stated by the Truck Transport Association that since there are hardly any zero-emission trucks on the market and no corresponding refueling and charging infrastructure, the doubling of the toll is like a tax increase that cannot be avoided. So short to midterm, this means that shippers will have to expect higher rates passed through by carriers and in turn higher transport costs, which will very quickly end up in the hands of the end consumers and potentially contribute to a general inflation rate. So hopefully those rail investments will show results, but the markets will adapt eventually. So that's all from my side. Thank you, Adrian. Back to you.
Thank you, Lena, for your great insights and advice. I think this is a great example of how shippers and carriers need to continuously evaluate their strategies and options in response to changes in the market. And one of those options should be to collaborate more effectively with each other to find win-win solutions when new challenges like this emerge. Another topic that is top of mind for many executives is the shrinking labor force. Simply put, the demand for labor across all parts of the supply chain today is significantly greater than the supply of available workers. This is particularly evident in transportation and the challenge of finding, hiring, and retaining drivers. To help shed some light on this topic, I'm excited to welcome another special guest to the program, Sandro Russo, who's Carrier Manager at Transporeon. Sandro, it's great to have you on the program. Can you share with us some of the factors that are contributing to this driver shortage problem?
Hello, thank you, Adrian, for having me here. Yes, indeed, the driver shortage evolved into a real struggle for the road transportation market, and unfortunately by 2026, European driver shortage will triple if no action is taken. How do we end up here considering the crisis started in the mid-2000s? Well, there are several factors that caused the situation to snowball over time. Once, the agile workforce, meaning that the workforce turnover is highly unbalanced as we see a huge number of drivers retiring and few new hirings. The perception and image of the job, long hours, extended periods away from home, the constant pressure to meet tight deadlines resulted in poor work and life balance. And the challenging nature of the job, including stricter schedules, more and more regulatory requirements and certifications, acted as a barrier, making the career choice less attractive than before. Another factor might be driver retention. Many companies face issues in retaining experienced drivers, and carriers make huge efforts to succeed in addressing these retention challenges. Otherwise, they find themselves in a constant cycle of recruiting and training the drivers, which can also compromise the service level. On top of all these, there is as well the external influence of economics during economic downturns or periods of instability. There may be a decrease in transportation needs, leading to a false impression that the driver's workforce is sufficient. On the other hand, economic growth and increased demands for goods will immediately highlight the scarcity of resources. And in such a complex industry, it's already challenging enough because there are so many variables to keep under control at the same time. And what makes it even more challenging is doing it in inhuman resource deficiency conditions. In conclusion, technology helps carriers to be more confident during times of extreme driver shortage and market volatility. And by automating and optimizing operations and slot bookings, improving visibility, enhancing communication, predicting issues rather than facing them, will also enable transport companies to avoid wasting resources and deliver a positive customer experience. And let's recognize the importance of automation and work collaboratively to embrace these transformative technologies. By doing so, we can build a resilient and future-ready transportation industry that thrives despite the challenges we face today. Thanks. I'm moving back to Adrian.
Thank you, Sandro, for your perspective on this important topic. For sure, there are no easy and quick solutions to the labor shortage problem, but it's clear that all stakeholders need to think creatively and work together more effectively to overcome this problem. And this is certainly an area where technology can help by eliminating waste and inefficiencies in the processes. Okay, back to my football analogy. Halftime is over. It's time to leave the locker room and start the second half of the year. What is the biggest adjustment you're going to make in your supply chain logistics operations to finish the year strong? I believe that is the question all supply chain teams should be asking themselves right now. Of course, the answers will vary by company, but in some ways, I believe the answers are less important than the process of getting to the answers. That is, the biggest adjustment you can make to succeed moving forward is for all stakeholders, internal and external, to engage in conversation together, to share ideas, to listen to each other, to find common ground on desired outcomes, and to work together as a true team, especially when the unexpected happens. Thank you for watching this edition of Transporeon Journal Market Updates. I wish you all the best in the second half of 2023.